Hi, everyone. Hello. If everyone can find their seats, we're going to get started soon. There's a lot of seats over here on house right, stage left. There's several rows of empty chairs over here if you're still looking for a seat. There's, in the front row here, there's some chairs, slightly. You can pay less for those. They're a little bit obstructed view. There you go. Hi. There will be, the speakers will be up there too. If you have a little bit of an obstructed view, you'll be okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Hi. Unju always says hi back. It's great. I love her. Good evening. Oh, wow, thanks. As is customary, I am honored to formally begin today's proceedings with a land acknowledgement. ICA acknowledges that the land on which we reside is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize that the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. We honor the elders past, present, and future, and those who have stewarded this land throughout generations. We recognize that government, academic, and cultural institutions were founded upon and continue to enact exclusions and erasures of Indigenous peoples. May this acknowledgement demonstrate a commitment to working to dismantle ongoing legacies of oppression and inequities and recognize the current and future contributions of Indigenous communities in Denver, in the broader United States and the world. Dear scholars, colleagues, and friends, as the Executive Director of the International Communication Association, my name is Laura Sawyer, and I am delighted to welcome you to this year's conference, ICA 25. Yay! Woo-hoo! Getting everyone here to Denver this year has not been an easy feat. Neither the staff nor the planners have had the luxury of doing this conference the same way 2 years in a row since 2019. Here in the United States Postal Service, just one of the many institutions whose very existence is under threat at the moment, has a motto that boasts of its resilience. Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. I've known that since I was a little kid, and it just means your mail's not going to be late no matter what the weather is, right? And I was thinking about that, and I thought, if ICA had a motto like that, it might be similar, and it would say, neither Puerto Rico's Zika, nor Fukuoka's earthquake, nor San Diego's travel ban, nor DC's tornado, nor wildfires, or a global pandemic, or the giant bats and spiders in the Gold Coast, or a constitutional crisis or fascism will keep ICA staff and members from our appointed rounds. We ICA people, we may not be the US Post Office, but we're going to show up. And we show up physically when we can, yes, but more importantly, we show up for each other emotionally. And as colleagues and as humans, and that's what makes this association awesome. And that where we will meet you where we are, where you are mentality, that we talked about in 2020, if you remember our little video where you pass the paper to somebody else, and we welcomed you to attend the conference in your PJs, and you could have a glass of wine, and your baby on your hip, and your cat walking across your keyboard while you were giving your paper. You remember that? So that mentality is still here. We're still here for each other, and the challenges are different now, way different, and maybe harder in some ways, although it seems weird to say that anything could have been harder than the pandemic, but sometimes it feels like it is, right? And those types of challenges are exactly what associations are here for, to give you the resources you need, to give you a sounding board, to connect you with someone who's already been through it or is currently going through something that you're going through, to connect you with a research partner or a new job or the mentor that you've always been looking for to help you see your true potential and coalesce that community around you when you need to know that you are not alone. And that is what associations like ICA are here for, and that's why I love what I do. So, speaking of the life-changing power of associations, before we get started, I have a special treat for you this evening. We were going to save this for later in the week, but our president-elect, Thomas Hanitzsch, asked that we move it to tonight because it serves as a perfect introduction to tonight's plenary. So in addition to the other anniversary projects that you can participate in or browse while you're here, the archives, which are amazing, the timeline, amazing, and the museum, over the past year, we've been collecting footage and interviews and memories from ICA members, and our videographer has been putting together a special mini documentary to commemorate ICA's 75th anniversary, and I am thrilled to show it to you tonight. Here it is.
2003,
24, 2006,
2007,
2010,
2011,
2014,
2016,
2021.
Is this your first time at ICA?
Yes, it's my first time.
I cannot remember. It feels like I've been there forever.
So this year will be my 25th anniversary.
ICA has been my constant academic home for 45 years.
I've been a proud member for nearly 50 years.
Which means next year I will have been going to ICA for 50 years, which is astonishing.
I have attended all but one of those 54 conferences.
I was there 75 years ago. Oh my God, for my age.
ICA began as a small group of scholars with large aspirations to develop and to advance the worldwide study of human communication.
NSSC, which is the organization that ICA evolved out of in 1969 when the name ICA was adopted. At that time, we had a lot of non-academic members from business and government and voluntary organizations, as well as teachers who were not interested in doing research. I said I thought we should be true to our mission, and even if it meant losing members and growing slowly, that I thought this was the appropriate direction for the association, and ultimately that's what it became.
When I entered ICA, it was the time that critical theory was really coming into its own, and many of the early scholars who laid that particular strand of the field down, like George Gerbner and Herbert Schiller and some of the old guard, they were still very much there and involved.
But even after it was renamed, it constantly struggled with having to deal with the fact that it was primarily based in the United States of America. The first actual international conference outside of the United States didn't go very far. It went to Montreal, Canada.
So when I joined, it was very American, so there weren't many Germans there. So I think we were like 5 people or so, and we were like exotic animals. Everybody was like, look, there's the Germans.
I was the student board member in 1980, and at that board meeting, we were deciding where the Pacific Rim Conference would be. In those days, ICA was an international site every 5 years. The decision was to have the conference in Honolulu, Hawaii. Well, as a student board member, I sort of explained that that's not international, that's US.
Internationalisation tended to be measured by North American delegates versus rest of the world. In Europe, Germany, the Netherlands, the Scandinavian countries have always been strongly represented. In Asia, Singapore, Hong Kong, China increasingly. Australia is one of those. But we're also aware that that means that some very important communications regions in the world are underrepresented. So India, Indonesia, the African countries, Latin America.
And then they say, we need a contact in Africa. Will you help us? I was like, yeah, I'm ready. So we started the process of bringing Africa on board. As we speak today, there's the Kenya hub running, there is Nigeria hub running, and many other hubs outside Africa, but outside the global north.
So I was president in 2021, so I will go down in the ICA history book as the COVID president. We basically went from having a regular conference to having the first virtual conference, and it was one of the first global associations that did it. I think it really triggered a lot of conversations about the future of ICA, about hybrid conferences, about using this as an opportunity to, be more inclusive and also have more global reach. So maybe in some odd way, ICA came out more as a community and also a little bit stronger.
ICA began to reimagine the ways in which we could engage with the world.
I think the founding fathers would be very proud to know of that extension of ICA around the world, where ICA has become a global organization with 7,000 members from more than 80 countries around the world.
My early impressions of ICA was that I was terrified.
I was trembling like a leaf, and I was really, really insecure, and it was like, welcome to the show.
I was petrified.
I was overwhelmed.
My first ICA was pretty overwhelming.
It was a little bit overwhelming.
It was so overwhelming.
My first impression was, oh my, this is so huge. Convention is huge, so many people, and I'm lost.
Where am I going to say it? Do I have the nerve to say something? Will I ask a question?
ICA is big. It's intimidating. I felt so small.
No, there's some kind of magic at those conferences where people actually give you a sense that you're welcome, that it's okay, that you'll be fine. And then very quickly, it became very stimulating, much more than intimidating.
My first ICA, I was just really amazed as a graduate student to see so many of the scholars that I had been reading about in my classes, to meet them in person. It was, a celebrity moment.
The first person that really blew my mind was Michael Griffin. He was at my very first ICA presentation. So I was like, oh my God, like I'm meeting a rock star.
Seeing like George Gerbner and Stuart Hall talking to each other.
I remember meeting Wilbur Schramm, Elliot Katz.
I have this vivid memory of doing a paper presentation and then going out to the pool and talking with Ted Zorn about my paper as we were swimming, and it was hilarious and awesome.
That was my first time in DC, and after visiting the Lincoln Memorial and seeing many tall statues in the city, I had expectations to encounter at my first ICA real intellectual giants of similar height. I got seriously disappointed when I found out some of my intellectual giants were actually shorter than me.
And I was just in awe of these great scholars, and that they would talk to me, a young scholar, and introduce me to other scholars in their network.
I think that my impression from the very beginning was that there were people who were going to help graduate students, people who were going to help early career scholars, and that really convinced me that I want to be part of this and to give back in some ways.
I stayed in sessions from morning till night. I wasn't sure about academia when I first went to grad school, but after my first ICA, I was sold.
People were very kind. People stopped me and asked me if it was my first conference. I guess they could tell.
I have a really distinct memory of my first ICA reception. People started looking at me a little funny, and I was wondering why they were looking at me strangely. And some of them, everybody was really nice. They would come up to me, and because I had a new member sticker on, and they would say, wow, that's really nice. Hi, welcome to your first ICA. And they kept bending their heads. And I looked down and realized that I had my name tag upside down and my new member sticker upside down. And people were too nice to tell me what I was doing.
20 years later, I can't turn a corner without seeing someone I know.
And today, ICA is my extended family.
And it doesn't seem so overwhelming anymore.
I'm really proud of where ICA has come in the last 25, 30 years.
So when I first came, it wasn't very international at all, really. It was mostly American, and the international participation was very limited.
So this is ICA, International Communication Association. Where are the Africans?
In fact, that was an ongoing discussion and concern. How do we bring more international people into ICA?
To diversify the discipline, both epistemically but also geographically.
Especially in regions of the world where historically ICA has been underrepresented.
A notion of inclusion, diversity, and justice that resonates with people who live in Indonesia, with communities in the Middle East, with people in Australia and in Africa.
ICA is making a conscious effort to be inclusive of scholars coming from Tier B and Tier C cities around the world and the Global South, and making more travel grants available, making more registration waivers available.
I'm a beneficiary of a fund or a scholarship for this conference. They have packages or support system for students and those coming from underprivileged communities or countries. See people from Indonesia, from Malaysia, from China, from Africa, where I come from. It's so diverse and it's so beautiful.
So I see the effort from the organization to try to be inclusive of people of color and LGBTQ people and so forth. I really appreciate the space that ICA is creating.
Disability topic is an overlooked topic. My supervisor pulled a panel on disability and he recommended me to present.
There's been a concerted push by a number of the leaders with a lot of help from the members, and it is a wonderful thing.
Now you see the different colors, the different people, the different professionalisms coming on in ICA. This is the ICA that I envisioned. We made it happen.
I think one of the great improvements has been the growth in the richness and sophistication and the coverage and the reach of the work that ICA does.
The quality of the research is really good. It's really competitive. I had this guy from a large West Coast university who was elected Fellow of the American Academy, and he got the paper rejected the year that he was elected a Fellow, and I told him that, hey, we got standards, right? So
It's changed in the sense of becoming bigger, more sophisticated, more diverse in the different intellectual approaches.
There were a lot fewer divisions when I joined. In fact, one of the nice things about ICA that I've seen change over the years, that there's been a proliferation of specialties within the field that has led to interest groups and divisions.
They've also been developing excellent journals with strong impact factors.
We now have journals that are associated and affiliated with ICA from Germany, from France, from China, and from Chile.
It's become a lot more embracing of graduate students. I think the chairs of divisions have done a great job.
The organizational communication division unit often does these pre-conferences, and to be involved as a graduate student or a junior scholar has really helped skyrocket my career.
I think the future holds lots of dynamics that we can't even imagine.
I think the future for ICA is really bright.
The future is going to be turbulent. I think the future is really bright.
I mean, I hate to be macabre, but at this point in time, we're kind of in trouble as a discipline.
Well, the future is quite uncertain.
The future of ICA is interesting.
The future looks bright. Looks very, very bright. That's my optimistic feeling about it.
There has never been a more important time than now to think about and study and practice meaningful communication.
I think so many of our world's problems actually can be helped and ameliorated through communication research and communication science.
But we're coming into a post-truth future where there is no reality and everything is subjective. I think scholars are going to be demonized worldwide increasingly, and I think ICA is going to be sort of the Rock of Gibraltar in a very stormy, turbulent sea.
We are under attack in every continent around the world, attacks that are escalating, that are intensifying. I think it's really important for ICA looking forward to figure out how, as an institution, as an organization, we can help the discipline.
Issues of misinformation, disinformation, framing, truth, all of those things. And it involves complicated conversations, complicated intellectual work. And ICA is the sort of place where that happens.
You know, the pandemic actually has shown us how important communication is.
COVID, I think, is a perfect example of the need to consider real-world public challenges in developing our science and developing our practice.
A lot of people are recognizing that communication is the way to solve some of the wicked problems facing society. It is the creativity of communication scholars that are bringing new ideas and new approaches to how we solve those problems.
So many of our issues, they're not just political issues, they're communication issues, and how difficult it is to speak across political and other boundaries. So I think there's a great future for ICA to attend to some of these issues.
We are at a point in world history where there are a lot of uncertainties, right? And whether that is the geopolitical climate of the world or the funding for higher education or the way that we think about large conferences in the light of climate and carbon footprint and these kind of things.
We're part of the forefront of thinking about what it means to communicate in the 21st century at a local level, at a community level, at a national level, at an international level, at a galactic level, with so much satellite communication going on.
With the change in communication systems and the rise of artificial intelligence, communication questions are more central to all aspects of life, and that speaks well to the future value of our work.
The reason why ICA exists is because it has been the center of gravity for what at the time was an emerging field of communication. And since then, a lot has changed in the world, a lot has changed in our discipline, and a lot has changed in our community. One of the enduring facts about our community is that people join ICA because of the scholarship. They stay in ICA because of the community.
It is, after all, the Lollapalooza of communication research.
ICA is wonderful. It's really my scientific home, and I'm thankful.
I feel like it's a privilege to continue to be part of ICA.
I still wear my Dresden 2006 ICA t-shirt.
My career would have never been what it is without ICA.
I can't explain all of the different ways that ICA has supported me, and I found many lifetime friends and colleagues through the organization.
It's watching the convention turn from my reference list into people that I know. Suddenly it's, I know them, I know their family, we stay at their house, we visited.
Not just see people's scholarship mature, but meeting people's children, both their academic children and their real children and others over time.
ICA is a place where I've made the dearest and most wonderful friends that I could ever imagine.
ICA's family.
I do want to thank the ICA organization, the boards, the past presidents, and all the wonderful participants for making ICA what it is today.
Well, I love ICA staff
who have just done a wonderful job of keeping the organization moving forward and building as the organization membership grew and diversified and became more international.
So I just want to say that Laura's arrival, I think, has been a fantastic contribution to ICA, and I hope that you will be with us until we celebrate the 100.
It really is such an amazing community to be a part of.
This is a really wonderful, well-knit community of individuals who have very diverse viewpoints, very different priorities, and yet they all understand that there is something common, a common bond that ties us all together, and that is our passion and commitment to understanding and enabling a better society tomorrow by our scholarship in the area of communication.
Congratulations, ICA.
Congratulations, ICA.
Happy 75th anniversary, ICA.
Badr ICA. Herzlichen Glückwunsch zum Geburtstag, ICA.
ICA のお誕生日75周年目おめでとうございます。
Hongera sana ICA kwa miaka 75. Hongera.
Voilà. Tillykke ICA 75, det er flot.
Joyeux anniversaire, félicitations.
恭喜。
Imamuchingpa in the Ghanaian language. Aiko.
Alf Mabruk, ICA.
Congratulations to ICA.
Congratulations, ICA.
Happy 75th ICA.
Happy
75th anniversary.
ICA.
3 cheers to ICA.
Happy birthday, ICA.
Happy 75th anniversary, ICA.
And here's to another 75 years.
Can't wait until the next conference. It's going to be awesome.
Okay, it is now my honor to officially open the 75th Anniversary Conference of the International Communication Association, ICA at 75, Disrupting and Consolidating Communication Research. Please be aware that this session is also being streamed to the hundreds of remote attendees joining us remotely, including all of those who are attending as part of our hubs in Nigeria, Kenya, Egypt, Pakistan, India, China, Indonesia, and New Zealand. So to our hub attendees, Ekaabo, Karibu, Ahlan Wasalan, Swagat, Kush Amdid, Salamat Datang, Huan Ying, and Kiora Nomai. And now, the moment you have all been waiting for the academic portion of our evening, the opening plenary, ICA at 75, looking back, forging ahead. It is now my pleasure to introduce the chair of this evening's session, Chair and Professor of Communication at LMU Munich, where he is currently Research Director in the Department of Communication Studies and Media Research, a former journalist. His teaching and research focuses on global journalism cultures, war coverage, celebrity news, and comparative methodology, former editor-in-chief of Communication Theory, past chair of the Journalism Studies sections at ICA and ICA, leading the worlds of journalism study, a multinational and collaborative endeavor to trace journalism cultures and investigate the profession's transformation around the world, an ICA fellow, the planner for this year's conference, and in a matter of mere days, our soon-to-be ICA president, Dr. Thomas Hanitzsch.
Thank you, Laura, for this introduction. Man, what a wonderful video. I was almost breaking out in tears. That's so moving. And it's really hard to keep the spirit in the room. Okay, welcome to Denver. Welcome to the 75th Conference of the International Communication Association. We come together in challenging times. Our colleagues in the United States and elsewhere face an unprecedented assault on academia and higher education. As a scholarly association, ICA stands in solidarity with our colleagues suffering from systematic defunding, from ideological interference, and other attacks on academic freedom. The ongoing political turmoil in the US also had consequences for conference planning, adding significantly to the already very high workload of the ICA headquarters team. In response to the evolving situation, we created additional opportunities for remote presentation for those who were not able to come to Denver. And we expanded the program to make space for us to discuss the consequences of current disruptive developments for our institutions, the association, and our academic environment as a whole. Just last week, we held 2 online panels to discuss the concerns of our attendees related to traveling to Denver from abroad. On behalf of our members and the participants of this conference, let me express our sincere gratitude to our hardworking headquarters team who runs this growing association and our conference so amazingly smoothly. Specifically, they are Executive Director Laura Sawyer, Associate Executive Director Tom Minkowski, as well as Julie Arnold, Jennifer Lee, Christopher Rochette, Carly Zanesak, and Katie Wolf. Their hard work and dedication make the fuel that keeps ICA's engine running. Thank you so much. For this conference, we have received over 7,200 paper submissions, not counting submitted and invited panels. That's a new ICA record. Yeah, that's worth an applause. Thank you. Most divisions and interest groups planners had to run peer reviews on hundreds of conference papers in just a few weeks. They had to organize the peer review survivors into thematically coherent panels. If you, in December last year, saw a colleague sitting on the floor with piles of conference abstracts around them, frantically trying to bring order to what seemed to be a never-ending chaos. That was a program planner for ICA. Our planners provide an invaluable service to this community beyond all the teaching, research, and management duties they have in their home institutions. It is the spirit that keeps this association thriving. Thank you so much for your hard work for ICA. Furthermore, I would like to thank our dedicated local host committee led by David Boromisha-Habashi. David, are you here? Can you just wave? There he is. Thanks, David. Those of us who came to Denver with our kids, and that would include me, may remember the excellent advice the local host committee provided on attractions and features in the Denver area for that specifically appeal to families and children. Also, I would like to point your attention to a new feature we offer to our delegates in conjunction with the association celebrating its 75th anniversary, the ICA at 75 digital exhibition. You might have seen this exhibition already just in front of the hall. The exhibition presents a selection of digitized historical materials curated by our colleagues Dave Park, Dominique Trudel, Samantha Dodd-Somerville, and Jeff Pooley. Thank you. The digital exhibition, which includes an ICA timeline, Laura mentioned it just a few minutes ago, tells the story of ICA beginnings and developments over the past 75 years. It can be accessed online and is also available in the exhibition hall during the conference. Last but not least, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to you, the wider ICA community, for submitting your research to our conferences. Your work makes the annual conference, ICA conference, the prime venue for research and intellectual exchange in our discipline. Thank you very much. That said, we all should remember that attending this conference is a privilege. Please allow me to use this moment to recognize the many colleagues who could not join us because of, among other reasons, care responsibilities, health reasons, visa restrictions, shortage of travel funding, and physical destruction of their academic infrastructure. We hope to see these colleagues again at future conferences, for instance, in Cape Town next year, 2026, in Glasgow 2027, or Bangkok 2028. Now, this year, ICA celebrates its 75th anniversary. The association was founded in 1950 in Austin, Texas, as the National Society for the Study of Communication, or NSSC. In 1970, it changed its name to become the International Communication Association, accounting for the association's repositioning in an increasingly international environment. Today, ICA has more than 5,200 members in over 85 countries. This year's conference theme is ICA at 75, Disrupting and Consolidating Communication Research. I developed the theme and its rationale in close collaboration with my conference theme committee members. They included Yarif Tzfati, is he here? David Boromisha-Habashi, already waved his hand. Magdalena Saldana, anywhere? Karin Wahl-Jorgensen, Hermann Wassermann, and Wei Yu-Sang. When drafting the theme, we wanted it to offer multiple opportunities to critically reflect on our field of scholarship and the role of ICA in shaping it. The theme not only honors the institutions, thinkers, and ideas that contributed to the foundation of the discipline, but also engages in a thoughtful examination of the field's development, including the pathways it has taken and those it has overlooked. This opening plenary is intended to set the stage for the many more focused conversations we will have starting tomorrow morning. Some of these discussions will revolve around the history of our field and ICA, the future of academic publishing and our meritocratic system, the emotional toll brought on by the high productivity demands, persistent global and social inequalities in scholarship, and the new challenges posed by AI to the scholarly world. This opening plenary does not intend to provide definitive answers to questions that have plagued the field for many years. Instead, we want this plenary to whet your appetite for what ICA 25 will offer you in the next 4 days. That said, today's world is clearly different from the one we had in mind when we started conference planning. Since January this year, we had witnessed a massive attack on academic freedom, the integrity of science, and higher education in the United States. Many conversations we had during the past weeks orbited around this assault, and we will continue to have these discussions in Denver. In the following 35 minutes, I will discuss selected aspects of this year's conference theme with 4 distinguished colleagues. They have all been my first choice, and I'm glad that they agreed to be on the podium today. This opening plenary brings together scholars who came of age in ICA and the field in different decades of its evolution. Due to their distinctive biographies, research interests, and service to the field, they bring substantial diversity of experience and perspective to this panel. Now, I invite our 4 panelists to come to stage, please. Thank you. Let me introduce them one by one in alphabetical order. Hanan Badr, sitting to your left, is a professor in the Department of Communication Studies at the University of Salzburg, which is just 1 hour away from my home university in Austria. She is the chair of ICA's Activism, Communication, and Social Justice Interest Group, which just became a division in yesterday's board meetings. Congratulations. And you probably know that Hanan is an outspoken advocate of a cosmopolitan approach to communication scholarship. Cherian George, sitting to the right, is a professor at Hong Kong Baptist University School of Communication. He is a former journalist and native of Singapore, where he started his academic career. A fellow of the International Communication Association, he is known for his critical views on academic freedom and institutions, notably constraints on universities and obstacles to globalization and de-Westernizations. Welcome, Cherian, to this podium. Thank you. Robin Mansell is a professor emeritus at the London School of Economics and Political Science, UK, and a fellow of the British Academy. In the past 2 years, she has been the scientific director of the International Observatory on Information and Democracy, an NGO based in Paris. Between 24 and 28, Robin served the International Association for Media and Communication Research, IAMCR, as its president. Welcome, Robin, to the podium. And last but not least, but sitting right in the middle, Jeff Pooley is research associate and lecturer at the University of Pennsylvania's Annenberg School of Communication, where he works on the school's history of the field collections and oral history projects. He recently co-curated the ICA at 75 digital exhibition and ICA timeline, which I encourage you to visit in the exhibit hall during the conference. Welcome, Jeff. So now let me move to my chair. Oh, the chair is moving. All right. So my first question goes to Jeff. Jeff, you have done fantastic work on the history of our discipline. And the foundation of this association is an interesting story in itself. I noticed some variation in the way people remember those early years. Can you tell us, Jeff, which version is true?
Well, thank you, Thomas. I feel like this answer is a footnote on the video that I just saw for the first time. But I did just want to make one last plug for that digital exhibit, mainly to echo the point that Dave Park and Dominique Trudel were the real curators, and they're also the leading historians of ICA writing right now, and I just wanted to make that clear. Yeah, there is a potted history of ICA. Like many potted histories, it's not quite right, it's not quite wrong either. And it goes something like this. In late 1949, right, a breakaway band of quantitative social scientists carved out a space of their own from the Greek-fed antiquarian scholars of rhetoric who dominated what was then called the Society for the Speech Association of America, and they established, according to this story, a beachhead of rigor exemplified by the Journal of Communication, launched in 1951. And as the story goes, they finally broke away from the SAA in the late 1960s, culminating in an independent, proudly scientific ICA. That's the origin story that I learned, and it's not exactly heroic, but it definitely has a Whiggish cast to it. And it's not what happened. When a handful of speech scholars talked very late into the morning hours of December 30th, 1949 in Chicago at the SAA's convention, the Big Seven, as they later called themselves, all very American, all very male, many of them from working in the upper Midwest, yeah, they did plot what became, and they decided to call the National Society for the Study of Communication, which they founded early the next year as an affiliate of the SAA. But what they weren't was, they weren't social science evangelists. And Dave Park has made this point convincingly. The Big Seven, in their late night NSSC, really were the product of an internal debate within speech and rhetoric, one that was really about teaching, about speech instruction for undergraduates and even high school students. They were advocates, these seven boosters really, for what had in the Great Depression come to be called the communication course or the basic communication course. It was an intro class that was unblushingly vocational, meant to furnish students skills in 4 areas: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And so their quarrel was with other speech and rhetoric instructors who had a more traditional approach. And so Wilbur Schramm and his chi-squares and so on, they're nowhere to be found. Instead, it was a group focused on pedagogy and on teaching, on the classroom. And I think that's a kind of repressed history, given the way that the ICA subsequently developed. Okay, so very short time here. I'm going to quickly fast forward to 1968 and 1969. Yes, there were changes in the intervening years. It's much, much weirder than you'd think. Here I invoke Trudel's forthcoming paper. For example, really close ties to the business community and even stranger military ties, especially here in Colorado. Okay, but the late 1960s, 2 things happened that gave us the modern ICA. First, the name change, right? The adoption of International Communication Association. It was part of cutting loose those remaining ties to the SAA, 1969. But the second was equally important. It was a successful and rather sudden takeover so that this newly named ICA really did, even if it was 20 years later, become a readout of self-styled, quantitative rigor. Sometimes it's called the Berlow coup, named for David Berlow, the Wilbur Schramm student who founded and ran the Michigan State program for a number of years. He was, as he put it, ICA was ripe for takeover. And he and his allies descended on Cleveland in 1969. And only then, and in the years following, did ICA become what the potted, remembered history had narrated, a big behavioral science, psychology-inflected group of communication researchers. The last thing I'll mention is what to make of the international in the name, right? Given that the organization started as this hyper-parochial interest in Midwestern speech instruction, The formal reason cited was that the association by this time had over 150 international members, which was still a small share of the total. But the international was utterly aspirational, right? Indeed, one story told in the video itself of ICA over the next 50 years through today is a halting, history repeating, often good faith, often failing effort to make the organization fit for its name. But in 1970, circa, in reality, it was American through and through, and really a fourth stool in the country's bizarre professional association ecology. Its own niche was social scientists untethered from vocational trades, which I just want to repeat is an irony given the organization's history since it began life by obsessing over how to teach undergraduates how to read and to listen.
Let's stick to history for a little while. Robin, IMCR was founded in 1957 with the help of UNESCO, and you've been past president, or you are a past president of this association. IMCR has historically been more actively involved in political processes, especially during the 1970s and 1980s. Now, I have two questions for you. How would you describe the different approaches to internationalization and public engagement employed by ICA and IMCR? And second question is, what can ICA learn from this comparison?
Thank you, Thomas. I am tempted to say it's impossible to summarize decades of history in 3 to 5 minutes. So I will show you this, which is an edited collection of the history of IMCR, which came out in 2023. It's by Palgrave. It's not as expensive as you might expect. So I could stop there, but I came all this way from London. So let me give it a shot. I'll start in 1957. In 1957, the then president of IMCR, Fernand Terreau, had this to say. He said there would be no scientific progress at all that would be possible in the field of information and communication without extensive international collaboration. So that was a constant theme from its founding. If we go forward a little bit to 1966, the then president, Jacques Bourquin, would say that the mandate of IMCR was to bring together scholars from socialist and capitalist countries and industrialized and, in quotes, developing countries, united by a common enthusiasm for research in the field of information to the exclusion of any political polemic. Easier said than done. If we go forward to 1970, by that time, the IMCR Executive Committee, later to become the International Council, had representatives from Argentina, Brazil, many European countries, but also the former Yugoslavia, the GDR, and Japan. And I don't have time to tell you about how it expanded in international coverage in the next coming years. What I do want to emphasize is that IMCR consistently experienced the tension around the East-West and the global North and the global South. If we think about what that meant in terms of an association, James Halloran, who was the president from 1972 to 1994, a long run, argued that IMCR needed to embrace critical, theoretical, empirical, and humanistic theories and empirical research with critiques of research put forward as objective and value-free. And that was something that I would hear as a master's student during that period around 1974, and it was a consistent theme. During the 1980s and the 1990s, he would argue, along with other leaders in IMCR, that the central problem for the field of media and communication was to ask the right questions. This used to drive young scholars crazy because we would say, what on earth are the right questions? So what were they? Basically, the position was that it was really important to avoid the wholesale adoption of Western technology in the media field and theory beyond the West. So what were the kinds of questions that kept coming up consistently? What was being exported to the so-called developing world? What are the different conditions and values that researchers needed to take into consideration? Is cultural and media imperialism being followed by research imperialism? So IMCR's aim, I would suggest, was to negotiate an effective posture between scholarly research and between critical problem and policy-oriented research. And this was a continuous theme. IMCR, I went to my first conference in 1984. I joined ICA in 1980, actually. But at IMCR, we would consistently hear debated politically charged issues at conferences. And many of the members, including the leadership, were providing submissions to the UN. In the 1970s, as many of you will know, the non-aligned countries were pushing hard for information and communication sovereignty, and there were proposals for a new world economic and information and communication order. Members were contributing to the UNESCO International Commission for the Study of Communication Problems, otherwise known as the McBride Report, which was published in 1980, Many Voices, One World. And what were they offering? They were offering a critical analytical approach. And having looked at all of those papers, there were many, many of them, up to 70 of them, at least 2/3 of them were by IMCR members. McBride roundtables continued for 10 years after that, again with the participation of IMCR, emphasizing equality, diversity, and plurality in the media and communications fields, particularly. The association, from the very beginning, issued various public statements, sometimes informally. What were they on? They were on the protection of journalists, they were on the right to communicate, they were on freedom of research, and they were on participation in public life in service of democratic development. So that, in a nutshell, is what IMCR was about as far as I was concerned. I know there are IMCR members here in the audience as well, so forgive me if I misspeak at all. But I want to finish on this note. I don't think anyone in IMCR would claim that it was or is a unique factor in internationalizing the field, nor that it necessarily led in the project of decolonization, which is hugely important. But I think we would argue that it played and continues to play a really vital role, as did the ICA, though IMCR earlier began the emphasis on internationalization and what that might mean with no easy answers. So just to finish, throughout I would say, finding creative ways of addressing researcher-practitioner relations was core to IMCR. Creative approaches to the social sciences and media and communication and the humanities in particular, and policy was core to IMCR. And finding creative approaches to inclusion, whether it was east-west or north-south, was hugely important and continues to be so. And I end by wishing you all happy 75th anniversary. Thank you.
Now, talking about internationalization and talking about the I in ICA, Cherian, ICA has come a long way in internationalizing the association, and you have been a very strong voice advocating efforts to de-westernize and de-center communication scholarship. In your view, how successful have these efforts been in transforming our research agenda?
Thank you, Thomas. Well, over the past 20 plus years that I've been attending ICA, participants have surely become more diverse in ethnic background as well as national origin. And I think this was very beautifully reflected in the video that we saw just now. And this is also the case with editorial boards and so on. But I think when we talk about internationalization of knowledge and ideas, we should be mindful of the terms of trade, so to speak. Are we engaging as equals, or is there an unofficial but very real hierarchy between center and periphery? And Thomas, I think you're absolutely right to pose the challenge in terms of transforming our research agendas. And I think your own Worlds of Journalism program, for example, is a wonderful example of decentered research. But as you know, it's hardly typical. So yes, there's visible diversification in who's doing the research, increasingly non-white, non-American, but I think much less advanced in what is being studied and indeed whom our scholarship is for. So I think we need a vision of internationalization that grows from scholarship that is rooted in our own communities, deeply sensitive to local context, serving the people around us. But instead, I think a lot of the work from the periphery detaches from local needs when it tries to be relevant to a hegemonic Western agenda. Robin, you cited the term research imperialism, and I don't think that's an exaggeration. It is not impossible to do both, be deeply local as well as demonstrate global excellence, if you are as brilliant as, say, my friends in East Asia, Francis Lee or Jack Chew, probably around here somewhere. You can do it with distinction, but we know that ours is a game of percentages, and many junior colleagues end up sacrificing local impact to increase the probability of publication in nominally global but de facto Western venues. Within my field of journalism studies in my own country, Singapore, illustrates this problem. Scholars from Singapore, very well represented, as Terry Flew mentioned in the video, at ICA, but the number of academics at Singapore's major universities specializing in the press and politics of Singapore is zero. A lack of academic freedom is part of the problem, but not the only one. The other major reason is an incentive structure that rewards the production of research outputs intelligible to elite Western-centric journals and conferences, including ICA. May I put another point, another downer on the table? When we talk about the terms of trade, what's our common currency? Surely it must be more than just a commitment to the scientific method. We also need some shared normative first principles. We need to hold certain truths as self-evident, namely that all persons are created equal. An individual country, of course, can choose the path of ethno-supremacist nationalism and still call itself a nation state. But can a field or association call itself international if it does not embrace humanist ideals, especially the equal dignity of all? And so the way many universities in this country have responded to atrocities in Gaza requires some response. Is there any moral common ground underlying the international in ICA's name? I think this is an aspiration of many people I know, and it's a work in progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Cherian. Now I turn to Hanan. You had to wait for a long time. You belong to a generation of scholars who joined ICA relatively recently, and yet you appeared quite frequently in the video that we just saw. So you're a true cosmopolitan. Born in Cairo, you worked for institutions in Egypt, Kuwait, Germany, until you got a professorship in Austria. How did you experience ICA when you became a member?
Well, unlike what I said in the statement in the video, where I did remember when I joined the first conference in ICA, it was DC 2019, and it immediately felt home because I was in the pre-conference #CommunicationSoWhite, which is a major disruptive moment in our history, as you know, which refers also to the multiply cited article in Journal of Communication, Ferment in the Field, if I remember correctly, the special issue. And this is where I felt home. It was a lively discussion. We were discussing critical issues on how to produce research from the margins, how to create space for new theoretical inputs, for new methodological approaches, for new epistemic gazes from below, from the peripheries. I think this is, because we're talking about disruptions, right? This is, I think, what makes any field, any discipline, any living organism actually alive, that it should not stagnate. And I think this is what my trajectory so far in the ICA has been marked by, like scholars for transformation, the reciprocity, the adaptations to the changes in the field, and centering people and agency without being oblivious about the marginalizing structures and silencing practice which exist in structures as we know it. So what would constitute a true open or epistemic opening? I think this debate goes beyond the global north and the global south because this centers too much the geography and making it very binary discussion beyond other dynamic privileges and disprivileges across the whole spectrum. And this is where I argue to move beyond the formal check marks of diversity and inclusion that can turn performative and formalistic instead of giving the spirit of true inclusion and addressing the true power asymmetry in the field. Activism division, like the correct name is Activism, Communication and Social Justice Division, is a true example of the adaptation for a scholarly transformation from below. Within 8 years only, the first debut division meeting or panel was in 2018 in Prague. Gobin Young, I hope he's here in the room, was the founding father of the now division. It's not an interest group anymore. And I think this is a true example of how disruptions can lead to long-term transformation processes, especially reflecting 3 goals from the strategic goals of ICA. I will remind everyone in the room, probably the EC members know them by heart, and the ICA headquarter office as well. But global leadership, community inclusion, global representation and engagement, those are the top 3 of 5 strategic goals of ICA. So it's not that we preach something that we do not practice. Speaking of opening up the field, definitely what we do for living is producing knowledge, right, and passing it on through teaching, through critical research, in addition to the management, which someone has to do, you know. So how do we open up the knowledge production to shape a more inclusive future in the field, which is not inclusive enough, even with all the changes we are seeing? In our case, in activism research, an activism division, or in my particular research trajectory, we center decolonial feminist approaches that question the power structure, which means it brings uncomfortable dialogues. Because when you mention the privileges some people have, everyone has privilege in some way, it is at the end of the day also a resource issue. In symbolic capital, to speak in Bourdieu's terms. So it is an uncomfortable dialogue, but also a much needed one. I just want to show one example and celebrate that with you. I hope I'm allowed to. It's a very recent book, only published 4 weeks ago. Some of the editors are here in the room. It's a book called Cosmopolitan Communication Studies. We are 6 female editors: Carola Richter, Melanie Radu, Christine Horz-Ishak, Anna Litvinenko, who's here in the room, myself and Anke Fiedler. And we try, and some of the authors are here in the room as well, and we try to put scholarly contribution, obviously based in the German academic landscape, to offer what a cosmopolitan communication studies could be. And I think one of the things we need to acknowledge, and maybe we should not reach consensus on it, and this is normal, I think, and legitimate, is that there's no one way of doing communication studies and media studies. I think this is like a basic assumption. Like, you could start another project, Worlds of Communication Studies, if you have capacities and would like to do that. Yeah. But this is, I think, what we need to be aware of. There's no one way of doing communication studies. I think this is very important to pass on to the early career scholars who sometimes feel overwhelmed and intimidated when they come to the ICA the first time, because they think, oh, they're meeting all the hotshot people they've been citing, and there's only one way of doing things. And the first advice I give to my students, for example, is find your voice, find your tribe, and do what you really believe in, because this is, at the end of the day, we can only research what matters to us. I'll stop here, but I have more to say if you want.
Thank you. Oops, there's a cable coming out of me. Should I worry? All right. Now, speaking of academic freedom, Cherian mentioned it, and I also mentioned it in my introductory remarks. The current assault on higher education in the United States dominates much of recent talk. While absolutely concerning, it's worth noting that the developments in the US actually reflect a global trend. I looked it up. According to the 2025 update to the Academic Freedom Index, higher education is under attack in a wide range of countries in both the global north and global south. So here's my question. Have we, as individual scholars and academic institutions, remained too silent on this issue in the past? Who wants to answer first?
Oh, okay.
Please, go ahead.
I'll take that. Is mic on? Mic on? Is it on yet? Okay, now it is, yes. I'll take that as a rhetorical question, I guess, Thomas. Obviously, we've not done or said enough, and I think there are reasons for this that are worth pondering on. I think the issue is complicated by the fact that assaults on academic freedom are extremely varied, right? So they range from direct attacks on the physical safety of our members, like, for example, Anita Varma at UT Austin, who had the front windows of her apartment smashed a few months ago after she organized a workshop on diversity reporting. Then there are less violent but coercive threats to jobs, non-violent blocks on research, teaching, public engagement. And I think we're underprepared to deal with these various escalating threats. One reason why it's difficult to discuss academic freedom plainly is because of what Hanan referred to as, maybe a reluctance of uncomfortable conversations. There is a risk of stepping on toes. In many countries, the most common threats are internal to our universities, in the form of bureaucracies that police and discipline ideologically non-conforming academic activity. Indeed, and here's where it gets really uncomfortable, chances are that ICA includes not just victims of censorship, but also victimizers, members who have tacitly gone along with, aided and abetted, or even initiated actions that have restricted the academic freedom of others. I think we've also been slow to respond because academics in liberal democracies who set the field's agenda have felt until very recently that academic freedom was really other people's problem. Ironically, though, in parts of the world where there's always been a problem, like my own, many academics don't want to talk about it either. Many reflexively treat academic freedom as a Western issue, a Western cause. Such talk about academic freedom, democracy, human rights is often quite triggering for those of us from the non-West. It is seen as yet another excuse for the West to condescend to the global South, so we react nationalistically and defensively. And such reactions find sustenance in the official rhetoric of many emerging powers, China, India, and others. So there's, I think, a real danger of an extreme sort of moral relativism that undermines any talk of universal rights. And I fear that many global South commentators are throwing the human rights baby out with the Western bathwater, and global North actors are not exactly jumping in to save the baby either. So while universal humanist values should be foundational for the social sciences and humanities, these are everywhere challenged by existential fears of the other. And I think when these fears dominate, communities react to difference with a might is right logic that makes mincemeat of human beings, let alone human rights like academic freedom. That seems to be where we are now. So frankly, and I did promise lots of downers, I don't have very high expectations of ICA as an organization stepping up. But I like what Laura said at the beginning, that as individuals, we can show up emotionally when we are in need. And I think ICA is a great place to make such networks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. for 1 second. Yep.
Quickly, I chaired the IMCR Clearinghouse on Public Statements from 2015 to 2023, and so I can tell you just how difficult it is for any association to be able to conduct a dialogue on very, very contested issues. I think the struggle is well worth it, and I support what you've just said. I think if I was just to summarize what is so essential is to promote, wherever possible, discursive freedom. That although we fail many times more than we succeed, it is hugely important. I think respect for the other is hugely important and needs to be at the core of everything we do and everything we say. And then one other aspect, given the powers that be these days in particular countries, working hard with colleagues through cooperation in research and also improvisation to be able to address the top-down governmental and corporate powers which are excluding and marginalizing at every turn. And I think that has to be a role of an association. Thank you.
Hanan?
Well, thanks for this question. I mean, it's definitely resonates also with my experience working in countries that doesn't fare really high on the rank of academic freedoms, but then also switching to Europe and working there in countries that belong to the liberal Western democracies as we know them. And so I've experienced different academic cultures and different levels of self-censorship, but also outweighing decisions, doing research on things that matter to me, but still thinking of how to phrase them. I will just, I would like to share with you that today we had a very vibrant and successful pre-conference organized and co-sponsored by Activism Division, where these issues rose up among the scholars. We were discussing strategies to subvert the system, ethical responsibilities towards junior scholars, how to make them navigate, of course, coming from different countries, so we're not singling out a region here. How would we help them navigate to speak up, to work on what matters to them, but also without committing career suicide at the same time, because they have obviously interest in remaining in the academia. How would we help shape a disruptive discourse, a healthy critical discourse on basic commitments to human rights, which is, by the way, #1 value we as ICA are committed to in the ethics committee. So we're not talking about weird imported values, we're talking about human rights, press freedoms, academic freedoms, without which we cannot survive and we cannot produce the knowledge that would really advance the groundbreaking knowledge we want to produce and the innovative research we want to pass on. In my research, for example, with exiled journalists, with this and living through the inequalities and interviewing them, this is also navigating lines between what is involved research, which can be maybe eventually dismissed by some people in our discipline, but what also means giving them voice and reflecting their lived experiences without boxing them in certain victimized narratives as well. I'm speaking also from a certain positionality as a member of a marginalized, racialized group living in a majority country where I'm not part of the majority anymore. So I'm also aware of switching the positionality when I left my home country to go to Europe. I want to end here, but I hope that we can discuss also in the receptions. And I would want to end with a quote by Rosa Luxemburg, who obviously was killed by far-right fascists, where she said, "The most revolutionary thing we can do is always to proclaim loudly what is happening." So even that, in an act of defiance, even if we document that, witness that, and publish that, speak about that, that is also an act of defiance without necessarily going out to march on protests or demonstrations.
Thank you. Jeff, anything you would like to add?
I'll be very brief, but one thought I had as I was listening to you, Cherian, and also the answers that we've given is that there is this ironic risk maybe by focusing on the US kind of descent into fascism, as important as it is, that we reproduce the kind of parochial history of ICA itself with this notion of kind of an exceptionalism that, as we've talked about, has echoes and prehistories and current manifestations around the world. The other thing I was thinking of was that, Robin, you were talking about IAMCR and its politicized 1970s, and I was thinking of this split screen with ICA at the time, and this statement that the association put out in 1970 with the Kent State Massacre, and it was this muted, half-baked statement that condemned violence but said nothing about the National Guard, didn't take a stance on the Vietnam War. And it made me think about the role of associations taking political stances. I'm not sure myself, reasonable people can disagree, but I would love to see, echoing again Cherian's point, is that we turn inward, given the fact that the word international in our title can obscure quite a lot, even given like a video montage, for example, the way in which more of us might study the political economy of scholarly publishing and reputation and the very, very stratified world academic system as a way to, try to realize this still unfulfilled international that was, made part of our name back in 1969.
Thank you. Well, Cherian, your response to my question made me think, because I sense some pessimism in your answer in terms of how ICA would respond or does respond to current developments. And I know, of course, for a fact that ICA leadership is wrestling with how to respond to what's going on around the world. How should ICA respond in your view? So what would be your suggestion?
Well, this is, I don't know, and so therefore last month when I was in New York, I asked for a meeting with someone from Scholars at Risk, which is an international NGO that champions academic freedom. They too kind of kicked the can down the road by saying that, well, maybe ICA should set up a committee to look at this. So, but it's not easy, right? And I'm pessimistic. I guess I'm more wary than pessimistic. I'm wary because, to me, the worst case scenario is if ICA adopted an academic freedom mission and did it badly, right? Because speaking from my own experience, when political pressure was put on my university, 12, 15 years ago, I had no expectations that ICA would do anything about it. I never even sort of brought it up to ICA, and therefore my relationship with ICA remained very positive, right? What you can't expect can't let you down. Yeah. I think the worst case scenario would be if ICA then suddenly pronounced that it was interested in it. Victims of attacks approach ICA, and the response of ICA is the kind of mealy-mouthed statement that we referred to from Kent State. I mean, that would be adding, that's gaslighting, right? We don't want to be gaslit by ICA. We don't want to have ICA add insult to injury. Yeah? So that's my wariness. I don't actually think that an organization the size of ours can do a good job in expressing statements that in fact are healing. I would rather leave it to human rights NGOs, activist organizations, small networks. Yeah.
Thank you. Hanan wanted to add something?
I just want to add that ICA is not an abstract construct. ICA is us. ICA is people also. So I do understand the institutional dinosaur or vessel or container we are operating in, but ICA as a professional institution should also reflect the interests of us. So I would like to add the agency and the humans, us basically. We can change. If there are rules, we can change them. So not neglecting the disillusionment or the threats, like many also said that in the video, like uncertainty, massive threats we're facing worldwide, the global backsliding, but also potential maybe of hope that we can transform that through the human connections that we make and the memories we make and the joint actions we make.
Thank you. And in other words, we need to keep the conversation going, right? And we have time for that during the next 4 days. So, well, time flies by. That was a fantastic discussion, and it gave us much to think about and discuss for the next 4 days. Please join me in thanking our panelists for their insightful contributions. Thank you. And now, please enjoy the conference and see you at the welcome reception. Thank you.